Part 1. David wakes up at 7 a.m. in the morning when his phone alarm rings loudly beside his bed. He stretches his arms, yawns, and slowly gets out of bed with a sleepy smile. The sun is shining through the window, and the room feels warm and bright. David walks to the window, opens it, and takes a deep breath of fresh morning air. He looks at the street outside and sees people walking and cars passing by. After a moment, he goes to the bathroom to get ready for the day. He brushes his teeth carefully and looks at himself in the mirror. Then he washes his face with cold water to help wake up fully. David dries his face with a towel and walks back to his room. He chooses a clean shirt and comfortable jeans to wear today. After getting dressed, he goes to the kitchen to make breakfast. He puts 2 slices of bread in the toaster and waits for them to pop. While waiting, he pours a glass of orange juice and takes a banana. When the toast is ready, he spreads butter and jam on it. David eats his breakfast while looking at his phone for today's news. After finishing, he puts his dishes in the sink and grabs his backpack. He opens the front door, steps outside, and begins his walk to school. Part 2. David walks down the street with his backpack on his shoulders, enjoying the fresh morning air. The sky is clear, and the sun feels warm on his face as he passes by houses and small shops. A dog barks behind a fence, and David smiles as he waves to the dog. He sees a woman watering her garden and says politely, "Good morning," as he walks by. She smiles and replies, "Good morning, David." He continues walking and stops at a small bakery on the corner. The smell of fresh bread and coffee comes from the open door. David steps inside and says hello to the man behind the counter. "Hi, Mr. Clark," he says. "Everything smells great today." Mr. Clark laughs and says, "Thanks, David. Want a muffin for the road?" David nods and buys a blueberry muffin. He leaves the bakery and continues down the street while eating the warm, sweet muffin. The school is just a few blocks away now, and David sees other students walking in the same direction. One of his friends, Lily, runs up beside him and says, "Hey, David, wait up!" They walk together, talking and laughing about a funny video they saw last night. When they reach the school gate, the bell rings and students start going inside. David takes a deep breath, feels ready for the day, and walks through the doors with a smile. Part 3. Inside the school building, the hallway is busy with students opening lockers, talking, and getting ready for class. David walks to his locker, opens it, and takes out the books he needs for his first class. He checks his schedule and sees that he has math first period. Math is not his favorite subject, but he wants to do better this year. He walks into the classroom and takes a seat near the window. The teacher, Mrs. Hall, smiles and greets the students as they come in. "Good morning, everyone," she says. "Please take out your notebooks." David opens his notebook and writes the date at the top of the page. The lesson begins with some review questions from yesterday's homework. David raises his hand to answer one of them, and Mrs. Hall nods at him. He gives the right answer, and she says, "Good job, David." That makes him feel more confident. Class continues with a new topic, fractions, and Mrs. Hall explains it step by step. David listens carefully and takes notes. At the end of the class, the teacher gives them a short homework assignment. The bell rings, and the students start packing up. David puts his notebook in his bag and heads to his next class with a better mood. Part 4. David's next class is English, which he really enjoys because he likes reading stories and writing. He walks into the classroom and takes his usual seat in the second row. The teacher, Mr. Anderson, is writing something on the whiteboard. "Today we are going to read a short story and talk about it together," he says. David opens his book to the right page and looks at the story's title. It's about a boy who finds a lost dog in the park. As they read the story aloud in class, David imagines the scenes in his head and smiles at the funny parts. After reading, Mr. Anderson asks the class some questions. David raises his hand and shares his opinion about the main character. "I think he was brave to help the dog," David says, and the teacher agrees. The class then writes a short paragraph about what they would do. In a similar situation, David writes carefully and checks his spelling. When time is up, they hand in their papers and the bell rings again. David feels happy because English class always makes him think in a fun way. He heads to the cafeteria now because it's time for lunch. Part 5. The cafeteria is full of noise as students line up to get their lunch trays. David grabs a tray and chooses a sandwich, an apple, and a small carton of milk. He walks to his usual table where Lily and a few other friends are sitting. They smile and wave at him as he sits down. "How was English class?" Lily asks, and David says, "Great. We read a cool story about a lost dog." They all start talking about their favorite books and funny stories from class. David takes a bite of his sandwich and listens to his friends with interest. After eating, they still have some time before the next class, so they play a quick game on Lily's phone. They laugh and enjoy the break. When lunch is over, David puts his tray away and checks his schedule again. He has science. Next, which is also one of his favorite subjects, he walks to the science lab with Lily, and they talk about the last experiment they did in class. Today, they are learning about magnets, and David is excited to see how things work with them. Part 6. In the science lab, David finds a seat near the front with a good view of the board. The teacher, Ms. Carter, has placed some magnets and metal objects on the front table. She smiles and says, "Today we will explore how magnets attract and repel." David watches carefully as she shows examples using different objects. Then, the students work in pairs to try the experiments themselves. David and Lily hold magnets near paper clips and nails and watch how they move. "This is so cool," David says, as the paper clips jump toward the magnet. Ms. Carter walks around the room and asks students questions. When she stops at David's table, she asks, "Why do you think the paperclip moves?" David answers, "Because the magnet pulls on the metal." She nods and says, "Exactly." After the experiments, they write down their observations in a notebook. David enjoys the hands-on learning and feels proud of his work. When the bell rings, he carefully puts the materials back in the box and says goodbye to Ms. Carter. He walks to his last class of the day, feeling a little tired but also happy with what he learned. Part 7. David's last class is art, which is a fun way to end the school day. The art room smells like paint and pencils, and colorful pictures hang on every wall. David finds his seat and takes out his sketchbook. The teacher, Ms. Rivera, tells the class they will draw a picture of their favorite place. David thinks for a moment and decides to draw the park near his house. He uses green for the trees, blue for the sky, and brown for the walking path. He adds a bench and a small dog playing with a ball. Ms. Rivera walks by and says, "Nice work, David. I like the colors you chose." David smiles and continues adding details. The room is quiet except for the sound of pencils on paper. At the end of class, they hang their drawings on the wall. David looks around and sees all the different places his classmates drew. Some are beaches, some are cities, and one is even a spaceship. He laughs and says, "That's creative." When the final bell rings, David packs up his things and leaves the classroom. School is over, and it's time to go home. Part 8. David walks home slowly, enjoying the afternoon sunshine. The air is warm and a little windy, making the trees move gently. He passes the same bakery from the morning and waves at Mr. Clark again. "Good afternoon," he says, and Mr. Clark waves back with a big smile. David takes his time walking, thinking about everything he learned today. He feels proud of himself for answering questions in math and doing well in science. When he gets home, he puts his backpack down and takes off his shoes. His mom is in the kitchen cooking dinner, and the smell is amazing. "Hi, sweetie," she says. "How was school?" David says, "It was great. I learned about magnets and drew a picture in art." His mom smiles and says, "That sounds fun. Dinner will be ready soon." David goes to his room to relax for a bit. He checks his messages, watches a short video, and then starts doing his homework. He finishes his math problems and writes a few sentences for English class. After that, he sets the table to help his mom. Part 9. The family sits down for dinner, and David talks about his day while they eat. His dad asks, "What was your favorite part of the day?" And David says, "Probably the science lab. I liked using magnets." His little sister giggles and says, "Magnets are magic." They all laugh together. After dinner, David helps clear the table and wash the dishes. Then he goes back to his room to relax some more. He reads a few pages from a book he borrowed from the school library. It's about a boy who travels in time, and the story is really exciting. David loves stories like that. After reading, he takes a shower, brushes his teeth, and gets ready for bed. He feels tired now, but it's a good kind of tired. He lies in bed, thinking about his day and wondering what tomorrow will bring. Slowly, his eyes close, and he falls asleep with a smile on his face. Part 10. The next morning, David wakes up feeling rested and ready for a new day. He gets out of bed quickly and starts his morning routine. The sky outside is cloudy today, but that doesn't bother him. He eats breakfast, grabs his backpack, and heads out the door with energy. On his way to school, he sees Lily waiting at the corner. "Good morning," she says, and they walk together again. David feels happy to have good friends, fun classes, and a family that supports him. At school, everything feels a little easier today. He understands the math lesson better, he writes a longer paragraph in English, and he laughs more with his friends at lunch. David learns that every day is a chance to grow, try new things, and enjoy the small moments. As the final bell rings and he heads home. Again, he feels proud of himself. He knows that even small steps each day help him become better, stronger, and more confident. And tomorrow, he will wake up and do it all again, with a smile,